Hey, so hi everybody. This week, it's great to welcome a good friend of Alpine Presbytery, Rosemary Dewerse, who lives in Auckland. Hi, Rosemary.
Hello.
Rosemary knows us because you were involved in a research project probably a couple of years ago now around ministers and well-being and ongoing training and that kind of stuff. And then you also came and helped us at Alpine as part of our review process. So you know us pretty well, and it's good to see you. You've had some great input into our life. So do you just want to add anything else to your introduction and then just go into what questions have you got at the moment?
Sure. So I'm on the leadership council of the church that my family go to, but I'm also the chair of the council of an overseas mission agency. And I thought that I might actually reflect on the questions that have emerged in that particular environment, because they were really intense under COVID and the lockdown in particular. And I think our questions can be a kind of a useful case study for churches that are trying to be missional, and the sorts of questions that we've been asking, finding ourselves exploring. So for us, as lockdown approached, things were pretty full on, because we're focused on sending people overseas, people who are Christian professionals, where they're invited to lend their skills to local communities. And so we had people who were overseas, who were here on the ground. We had borders closing in countries internationally, including New Zealand's, and planes were being grounded. You know, more and more were not flying, and prices were going up. And we were also facing the reality that actually this could be reality for months ahead.
Yeah.
That the International Air Transport Association is saying things won't be normal until 2023. So for us, you know, our key question was kind of, well, what matters? What really matters here? And for me, in particular, I found myself going back into our history, which is nearly a couple of hundred years old, and particularly into our values. And I also found myself rereading a book that was published in 2015 called Structured for Mission, and it's by Alan Roxburgh. In that book, he usefully asks or points out that there are three layers of questions that organisations or churches need to be asking as they look to engage in mission. And so we found ourselves dealing with these kind of layers of questions. The first layer is, what is it that we do and how do we do it? So this is the kind of question layer that most communities ask under difficulty first. And so it's things like, well, what do? We meet on a Sunday for church. How are we going to do that when we can't because we're in lockdown? Well, we'll go online, you know, so those kind of very surface level sorts of questions. And some people in some communities stay at that level and never really go below or behind that. Mm-hmm. For us, we were deeply challenged at this level, because what do? We send people overseas. How do we do that? We put them on a plane and we send them to a country, and we couldn't do that all of a sudden. And the other reality for us too is that we rely on churches and individuals to donate to people to sustain them. And, you know, as people lose their jobs under lockdown, our donor base will be affected, and churches will be affected probably first, and then we'll feel that impact. Roxburgh then talks about a second layer of questions. Sort of the next layer down, if you're going deeper, is, so who are we then? And what is our identity and purpose? You know, what are we here for? And he talks about this as being the narrative that legitimates our existence. And so these are really crucial, and they're often implicit. You know, it's the way we do things around here. It's just who we are, and we don't always answer that question really sort of explicitly and particularly. But he talks about how that one needs naming, and it often needs review, and it's not always a place that we go to. So for us as an organisation, our answer to who are we and what are we here for is that we're here as people passionate about mission who exist to send. But we can't. So then that plunges us into, and we chose to be plunged into the next layer of questions, the third layer, which is kind of the foundational layer, which is around why. So what's our motivation? And this is usually drawn from what we believe in and what our values are. And it's kind of the bedrock. Doesn't mean it can't be reviewed ever, but it is sort of the bedrock motivation for what we, for who we are and how we identify ourselves and what we do and how we do it. Yeah. So for us in our organisation, we've spent a lot of time under lockdown in this place. And we've also been listening a lot to our international community, of which we are a part. And what we are hearing is something that COVID has sort of jolted us into recognising, which is that sending is only a subset of missional engagement. So going to others, helping others is only a part of missional engagement. And yet for us as an organisation, our whole idea of ourselves, our narrative about who we are and our way we're structured supports that subset. And if we're really honest, even though it's that we're well intentioned in this space, it's actually a profoundly colonial and paternalistic way of understanding missional engagement, historically colonial and paternalistic as well. So I think for many of us, generally our idea about missional engagement is that it's about going or sending, about serving, about helping other people. But what we're finding ourselves having to think about is, our values work for that, but actually if our values are inviting us into something much bigger in terms of missional engagement, where that is about mutual transformation and about humble learning. I love the Māori word ako, which we're teaching and learning are, two sides of the one coin. Mm-hmm. We're looking at reciprocity in hospitality and an experience of grace. It's not just about what I give to others or bring to others, but about what they actually gift and bring to me. And this whole sort of invitation to being community together. And so I guess my hope is that under COVID and lockdown, and sure we're emerging from it now, is that we've taken up, that we might all take up the invitation to journey through these questions, not just linger on the what and the how, but dive into the, who are we and what is our identity and purpose in this space? What are we here for? But even further and deeper into that, ask the why behind it all, and be up for God to challenge us on all of those levels and change us and invite us into bigger spaces, because I suspect that there's a whole lot more on offer to us than we often take up. So,
wow.
Watch the space, still thinking about it all.
Yeah, so I mean that is profound, and that sense of, like, what would your advice be to a church leadership team that intuitively thinks, we actually need to explore some of these things. It's actually hard to do that under duress, when we're busy going, what are we going to do on Sunday? And you made a comment that, they may stay the same, the why, but maybe they won't either. Maybe, one of the things God is up to is God's inviting us, I think, you even said, to broaden those whys. What would some advice be for a church council that you would have to go, how do we do that?
Well, I think those questions are quite useful ones, and to be consciously asking, and a key thing is to take time. This isn't going to be something that's going to be addressed or answered overnight. What we're discovering, because one of our values is dependence on God, and in that space we say we listen and we wait, we worship and we pray, and so I think you know, it's a long-term project, and let's be kind to ourselves, because there might be a lot that we need to unpack. There might be not so much that we need to unpack. But consciously taking those questions and tracing them back, you know, so asking, when you look at the what, having the courage to ask, you know, well, what does that say about who we say we are, and where does that sit with the why, and being willing, I guess you've got to find friends and be willing to go through this kind of journey together, but holding each other accountable to asking the questions behind each. And that's why I find Roxbury useful in offering this idea of these layers. Yeah.
You've got to find friends. That, I mean, as I was listening, I was thinking of the role of community and the importance of us in community doing this together, and being able to listen and hear the voice of others, and be open to critique my why, my personal why. And if that needs broadening, so our corporate why may need broadening.
And we're finding that as we explore these questions and invite our wider community here in New Zealand to engage in this, that God is speaking, and it's remarkable how many of the threads keep reappearing. And our challenge as leaders is to make sure that we are listening, that we don't have an agenda, our own agenda about what this means, but actually we're all genuinely listening for what God, you know, the Spirit of God is saying to us in this space. And,
right. And ultimately it's trusting that God will lead and reveal and form us. Wow, that's great. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.